Hello and welcome to the Red Jacket Club. My name is Andy. I'm here with Brendan. This is where we talk Cardinals baseball. It's December 29th, 2022. This is episode 9 of the Red Jacket Club. We're here to discuss Cardinals pitching. Is it any good? We'll get into that. But before that, it is just after the Christmas holiday. We're coming up on New Year's. Brendan, how you feeling? How was your Christmas? What'd you guys end up doing?
It was good. Just spent time with a lot of family. Mariah had to work on Christmas Eve and Christmas because she's a nurse. So
Yeah.
uh, that was a little weird. So we celebrated on the 23rd and the 26th. So all the days around Christmas, but not actually on it.
Yeah.
But it ended up being fine because I had some free time on Christmas Eve, which was nice. Got a lot of cool things from everyone. But other than that, it was pretty successful. Now I got the New Year's Eve party coming up on this weekend. So, what
You're
about you?
hosting?
Oh no, I don't have a big enough house for that. They mentioned my house to host, and I said no, we can't fit that many people here.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
For me, we it was a weird year. We had a lot of people sick. So, parent my mom got COVID, so that kind of scratched things out for doing a big family gathering because she is typically the host. Um,
Hmm.
and so we didn't do anything on Christmas Eve. And then Christmas Day, we weren't going to do anything, but my mom had just gotten out of whatever quarantine and she did test negative. So I wanted to see my family. I hadn't seen them since my birthday. So went over to their house. But other than that, it was a weird year. Everybody was sick. Everybody
Yeah,
got sick. Like, I don't know, kind of weird. But did
it
you
was
get any?
definitely that time of year.
Yeah, I'm sporting it behind me. Did you get any Cardinals related Christmas items?
Uh, I actually I don't think I got these shoes that I'm planning on. It's not directly Cardinals, but
Hmm.
I got these shoes that like have like red laces and like a red trim to it that I'm
Mm.
planning on wearing with Cardinals gear. So if that counts, then
That
uh,
counts. Yeah.
yeah,
I got the good old Nolan Arenado jersey behind me.
yeah.
That
See
that
that
was
nice white
that was
home
yeah,
jersey?
the big ticket item. So now I have a Goldschmidt white jersey, a Pujols home white jersey, and
Nice.
an Arenado home white jersey. So I think that's a pretty good trifecta.
I still need a jersey. I have a Bader jersey and a Mac jersey, and that's all I have right now. So I probably should have asked for one, but
Yeah.
uh, I don't know. I'm waiting for the City Connect uniforms to come out,
Yeah,
and then I'll drop
I
some
don't
money
know
on
if we're
that.
in that next group or not. They don't really announce it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and
so
it's always like very secret.
it is. It'd be fun to be a part of that this year, though, especially with the new player Wilson Contreras. That'll get some dollars into the pockets of the St. Louis Cardinals, and I know people will then be yelling about that on Twitter. But we've already had our Twitter slam session, so we'll
Yeah.
skip that for this episode. This episode, we're going to talk about Cardinals pitching, and there's a lot to talk about because there are some questions that still are unanswered, especially with the Cardinals not really making any moves in that department in terms of the rotation. We're going to strictly stick with the rotation for this episode and just kind of go from there. So what we're seeing right now, especially on Fangraphs, is that the Cardinals' rotation is sitting at Adam Wainwright, Miles Michaelis, Jack Flaherty, Jordan Montgomery, and Steven Matz, which sounds right to me. That's the five guys. I don't know if it'll be in that order, but those are the five guys that I see being in the rotation come March 30th. What are your quick thoughts, Brennan, on how you feel about the way that the rotation's set up, and how do you think that that'll go if these guys are able to stay healthy for most of the year?
Well, yeah. I mean, health is going to be the most important
Right.
part of this rotation, and we've got two guys that typically, or three really, that have stayed pretty healthy most of their career, and that's going to be Adam Wainwright, Michaelis, and Montgomery. So those to me seem like they'll be kind of I don't know. They should be solid this year. I'll just get right into my Adam Wainwright discussion. The only issue I see with him is obviously he regressed a ton at the end of last season, but he did state that he found why he was not feeling the ball in his hand. At the time, he was calling it dead arm, but really his stride shortened up, and he said that's the reason why. Um, and the biggest question is like, is that what he's telling himself, or did he actually, did he actually find that issue? Which I obviously believe him. He's a veteran. He knows his body. He knows how to pitch. So I think he'll be just fine. I think that was probably the problem because there was a significant shortening up of the stride. So I don't know. What do you think about Wainwright?
Yeah, I had been hearing that as well. His issues with finding that timing and that stride and that release point and things like that, which I mean, when it comes down to it, that's pitching. So if that's how things went, and obviously he's able to recognize it, I don't see him having any problems in 23. Um, and really the big thing for him is fighting for that 5 extra wins to get him over that 200 win mark. So that on top of realizing the struggle that he had last season, I don't think that he's gonna have any problems. I don't think he'll be our number one. I have some thoughts on that that we can talk about when we get to him. But um, yeah, for Adam Wainwright, I think he's just going to be the same consistent Adam Wainwright that we've seen over the last couple of years, actually increasing his value with the Cardinals. So I don't have any problems with him. I don't think he'll be a problem, and especially with how he's able to recognize himself, recognize the things that he's got going on, and with that stride issue that he was talking about. Um, Really, I guess just to talk more about Adam, I don't because I when we were preparing this conversation, I didn't really prepare much for Adam.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that I kind of almost forgot about is that thing that I guess it was Sunday Night Baseball probably did it with on ESPN, um, where he kind of went through how he warms up and everything like that. Um, I don't know. I just kind of was reminiscing on that the other day and just how interesting it is to see a veteran pitcher be so in tune with what he needs to do to get ready for a game. Um, and just kind of that reassures me for every season. If he wanted to play like Tom Brady till he just can't anymore,
Hmm.
I would think that even though baseball is a different sport, it's a little bit different on the arm. That right there just tells me that Adam has what it takes to be able to be in the rotation every year.
Yeah, and the other thing to note about him is he threw 191 innings last year with a
Yeah.
3.71 ERA, and that's significant. And the season before that, obviously he went off in 2021. He had 206 innings, and well, then there was 2020, but then in 2019 he had 171 innings. So he seems like he's gonna be durable for us. And if he can throw 190 innings for us and have let's say even if he has around a 4 ERA, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of where he has been the last couple of seasons, like mid threes, close to four.
Yeah.
But I mean, he gives you innings. It's insane the amount of innings that he gets us. Saves the bullpen every 5 days. So that's the value that you're getting out of signing him every year. He's just that guy that's going to get it done for you. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited to do what we did for Albert and Yachty last year. He definitely deserves it. It's going to be interesting the talks about him after the season's over, just kind of where things are in terms of like Hall of Fame talks, because I know a lot of people are still skeptical to even give him that nod. I'm biased. I think he deserves it. 200 wins will certainly get him closer to that yes column. Um, but it's so much fun to watch somebody with like I said, who's so in tune to what he needs to do in order to perform. It's just kind of incredible to be able to watch and I mean, every time we have these conversations, I just continually think about how lucky we are to have the team that we have. So, Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm excited when it comes to Adam. I think he'll probably slot either two or three in the rotation. Do you have any thoughts on where he'll likely be?
Yeah, he'll probably be around that. I just think that if he does stay as durable as he normally is, then that's where you have to slot him. I mean,
Yeah,
that's if he can not miss a start, then he's going to be in the middle of our rotation. And you don't want to bank on other guys that are injury prone at the top of the rotation. So yeah, I think he'll slot up there for sure.
yeah. Well, and I know that we kind of slotted him in the less injury prone slot, but he has had some injuries, especially recently. But and I don't know if you agree with me. I think Miles Michaelis, after opening day, will be the guy who eventually slots into that one spot in our rotation. The reason for this, he pitched over 200 innings last year, didn't strike out a whole lot of people, but at the same time, he walked his walk per nine was 1.7, which is insane. I remember watching him and being like, this guy never walks anybody
Hmm.
last year, and so he was an all-star. He's just again a guy that's going to chew those innings and keep your bullpen from working as hard. So, in terms of longevity with the team and everything like that, I think he slots in as our number one if the Cardinals don't make any more moves toward the rotation. Um, but I guess there's not much else I have to say on it. I think he's one of our best pitchers. Saw somebody today who was saying that we needed to trade for Pablo Lopez
Hmm.
so that he could be our number one starter. And I was like, well, if you look at their stats, they're almost identical. Like Lopez pitched 180 innings last year. Miles was at 202. Their ERAs were almost similar. They're actually almost exact. Like if we're saying that and we got Michaelis, I don't see why else we wouldn't put Michaelis at number one.
Yeah, I see him most likely slotting into that. The biggest thing for Michaelis is after the 2021 injury season, you kind of hold your breath when you come into 2022 because you would think the organization might have innings limits on him. He might get re-injured. There's a lot of question marks after he only throws 44 innings in 2021, and it turns out he's just fine because he throws 202 innings, which is very significant, especially in today's day of baseball. It's typically pitchers don't go too deep into games, but Michael has proved that he is healthy, and he had a 3.29 ERA. So not only is he healthy, was, I mean, he is an all-star. He
Hmm.
great pitcher, um, and yeah, his also I read something or I looked up some of his other stats, and his ground ball rate is also very above average last year. So you pair that with our defense, and I have something in here that I'm saying he's kind of a perfect Cardinals pitcher right now. He knows he doesn't have to be overpowering. He knows that the defense will work. So um, I think he works really well in our rotation, and I could definitely see him taking that number one spot.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of other pitchers that we got going on, I guess the next person that I want to talk about is Jack Flaherty, because in my opinion, for this season, he's the biggest question mark. I know that Matz didn't pitch a whole lot last year, and he brings question marks himself on whether or not he'll be ready, and how many innings he'll be able to go, um, or if, like you said, they'll have limits for him and stuff like that. Jack has had a couple of seasons to get back, and
Hmm.
this season, I mean, he's going into free agency after this season, so he's got to figure something out. And I'm not sure exactly where he'll end up. It obviously can go either one of two ways. He could go off, pitch really well, or he could kind of slump back into not being comfortable, like it seemed like he was toward the end of last season. Um, I'm not really sure which way it's going to go. He hasn't really proven that he'll get back to that back half of 2020 or 2019. Um, and so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. What kind of thoughts do you have on Jack Flaherty?
Yeah, so Flaherty, it's kind of weird to think about because he was such a big prospect coming up. In 2017, between double and triple A, he had a 2.18 ERA in 148 innings. So we knew he was on the way, and we were super excited for him. He comes up and he shows that he is an effective pitcher. He did great in that 2019 season, but then all of a sudden, he gets injured, and it was kind of downhill from there, and it hasn't gone uphill yet. And it is weird to see this big prospect be one of the biggest question marks coming into the season. And like you said, he could easily return to the form that he was at. I would not be surprised one bit, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he, I don't know, maybe re-injure something, because the past 3 seasons he's proved that he can't stay durable and he can't stay out there. And
Hmm.
when he does come back, like last season, he threw 36 innings, but he had a 5.5 walks per nine, which is really bad. League average is like, well, actually, I don't even know league average, but his
Hmm.
average is 3.2. So obviously, 5.5 is like way out of the realm for him. So obviously, something's wrong. And it just depends if he spent the offseason to figure that out, or if it's going to continue to be an issue.
Right. And what I was looking at was, I mean, this kid had Cy Young and MVP votes in
Yeah.
2019. And then, I mean, 17 games 2021, 9 games in 22. And the biggest thing that stood out to me is that in 2021, or I'm sorry, in 2022, his walks per or hits per innings pitched was 1.611. That league average, I know because I looked that up, is 1.3, and a good one is under 1.1. So it's weird to see him such a long way from where he was.
Hmm.
Um, and I I'm concerned. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is if he does kind of return to somewhat of a 2019 form. Do you see the Cardinals possibly packaging him, being that he doesn't want to, it seems like, not be with the Cardinals anymore? Could we trade him away for something that we might need at the deadline?
I really don't think we would do that. I think we're in the in the window right now where we're gonna go for it. We don't really care who we can get, but then again, I mean, who knows? It's a possibility, but personally, I don't think we would if he goes off. And I don't know. I think he'll be here to stay this year, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
obviously, the off season is gonna be a weird one.
Yeah, the only reason I say that is just because during this offseason, John Mozeliak hasn't really hinted at how hard they're trying to keep him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's so weird after somebody who was on such a high is now just such a big question mark. So
Hmm.
and I don't mean to insult Jack. And the only reason I'm not putting him in the 5 spot in this rotation is because Steven Matz needs to kind of work his way back to being in the starting rotation.
Yeah.
So I really see Jack probably being in that 4 slot
Yeah.
because Jordan Montgomery was so good last year.
I don't think you're insulting him at all. I think if anyone knows that they have to prove it this year, it's him. I
Yeah.
think he's got that competitive mentality, and I love the bulldog that comes out of him when he does pitch, and when he does pitch well, he's got that kind of, I don't know if people will hate me saying this, but kind of that Cardinals mentality. Cardinals fans won't hate me saying that, but other fans might. But that Cardinals mentality where it's like he goes out there, shows no emotion. When he does pitch well, he just shoves, and that's it. He walks off the mound with a lot of class. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't think he would be insulted. I think if anything, that'll motivate him to know that, okay, you think I'll be there? Well, I'll be your ace this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at least what you would hope out of him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want him to stay long term. I hope
Yeah,
the
I would
Cardinals
love it.
can extend him. I just don't see it happening. Um, so I again, we're hoping for the best out of Jack. He's just my biggest question mark for the year. I mentioned him before. I kind of want to get talking on Jordan Montgomery because I've listened to a couple others Cardinals podcasts, the one that I brought up to you today, Brendan, and one of them was talking about how Jordan Montgomery toward the end of the season and into the playoffs did not pitch well at all, and didn't really understand where that was coming from because
Yeah,
if
what?
you just look at his baseball reference page, it's clear that he was a very good pitcher for us last season. And as I mentioned, I think he'll slide in real nice in the three spot in the rotation to keep the lefties a little bit further apart from him and Matz. But I mean, last year this guy came over the Cardinals through a 3.11 ERA over 63 innings. So I mean, just somebody who's gonna again under 1.1 hits per innings pitched. So he's striking guys out. He's not walking guys. He was electric when he was with us. So I hope that he's acclimating well to being in St. Louis. I know it's a very different stage than being a New York Yankee, but it just shows that he can pitch at whatever level he's at. So I'm excited for Jordan. I think that he's going to fit in well in that three spot in our lineup. I guess give me what you got on Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah, one of the bigger stories I would say about him last year was the fact that the Cardinals kind of changed his pitching arsenal, and he started utilizing the four seam fastball much more. Apparently, the Yankees didn't believe in it, so he was throwing like a two seam or something more off speed, and he throws a mid 90s fastball, which for a starter, I mean that's pretty good. If you're throwing that for 6+ innings, like that's going to get you strikeouts, and it proved to be the solution because with the Yankees he had a 3.69 ERA, which is obviously still good, but he comes over to the Cardinals and starts throwing that four seam fastball, and he's got that 3.11 ERA. Like you said, he doesn't walk people. I honestly think he could slot into the two spot this year. I think he's that good of a pitcher and that much potential. I think the Cardinals will give him every opportunity to get into that two spot, just above Wayno. And that's not a shot at Wayno. That's just, you know, I think he may be better than Wayno this year. So,
Oh,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
that's what I think about him. I think he's definitely one of our more reliable guys that we have.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and hope that they don't do what they did with Quintana. Maybe Quintana uh, just didn't want to have any conversations with the Cardinals, but it seemed like the Cardinals just had no intention of extending or re-signing with Quintana. I know that Montgomery is not long with the Cardinals, but I think that just what he showed us last year is that, and like you said, that ability to adapt to new instruction, real coachable guy, goes a long way with clubs. I want to see more of Jordan Montgomery, so I'm uh, I'm excited to watch him this year. I think we can get into Steven Matz. Obviously,
Real
he.
quick about
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Monty, just really quick. I think if there was anyone to extend, it would be Montgomery.
Yeah.
He becomes a free agent in 2024, and maybe after this season, I could see us like skipping that last year of arbitration, giving him a nice contract. He's 30 years old, so he'll be 31 at that time. Um, Maybe like a 4-year contract to get him up to his 35 season if he does
Mhm.
well this year. I think if there's anyone to extend, it would probably be Montgomery. But anyway, yeah, that was just my final thoughts on him.
No, for sure. And like we said, the Cardinals don't really do long-term contracts for starting pitching. So
Right.
that 4-year slot is kind of right in their wheelhouse. I could definitely see that happening. To wrap that up on Montgomery, we can then go into Matt's. Matt's didn't get to see a whole lot of him this year. Obviously, it was exciting to have a little bit more of a change of pace because we had kind of been lacking on lefties, experienced lefties at least, for the last couple of seasons. So to get a guy who was geared up to pitch for us would have gone a long way. Pitched 15 games last year, so not a whole lot to go off of. But with that, he's still had a pretty decent, again, hits per innings pitched. I like to look at 1.250. Did not walk a lot of guys, did strike out a lot of guys. So you know, again, not a big sample size from what we got to see, but at the same time, as he works his way back, it's always great to have that lefty in your rotation that'll give you the innings, be able to be a strikeout pitcher. So I guess give me what you got on Steven Matz.
Yeah, so this is another injury-prone guy, as we know. It's not like these injuries just started to come up. He's had a few seasons with the Mets that he was injured, but he's also had some really effective seasons. And when we first got him, I kind of saw him as a low risk, high reward type guy. And I think last year kind of proved that. I mean, he was hurt. I feel like every start he came back, he would just get hurt again, which was very frustrating. And I understand why Cardinals fans would get frustrated with this guy and be like, okay, we need to move on. We need to find a 5 spot pitcher for depth. But I mean, we have this guy signed through 2025, so we gotta do something to figure it out with him. I don't know. In my opinion, we have time to kind of develop in the Cardinal organization. Obviously, we did it with Montgomery. He did great. Now I think Matz is going to be kind of our reclamation project, and it's still another like low risk, high reward type player. I think. Hopefully he stays healthy. If he stays healthy, then I think the Cardinals can really make him an effective pitcher again.
Absolutely. I don't have much else in terms of what is going on in the starting rotation. I did say that my ideal starting rotation for next season would be Miles Mikolas, Adam Wainwright, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, and Steven Matz. I don't know if you differ very much or what you're thinking as far as the order that these guys might be in.
Yeah, I don't think the order matters as much as like who's in there, and obviously that's going to be the 5.
Yeah,
I think you had something that MLB.com was projecting Liberatore in there, which we'll get into the depth of our starting pitching. But I think those 5 coming into the season, that's who it's going to be.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, And then in terms of like I said, I obviously you give the ball to Adam Wainwright on opening day. It's opening day in St. Louis, which is hadn't happened in a while until last year. So crazy that it's happening 2 years in a row. Um, I guess again, you give the ball to Adam Wainwright, right?
Well, yeah, of course
Yeah.
you got to give the ball to Wayno. I mean, it is a business and they're going to sell as many tickets as possible, which I'm totally okay with that. I would like to get some opening day tickets, and if Wayno's not this opening day starter, I would be a little disappointed. So yeah, he'll be opening day for sure.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about it. What about those depth pieces that you wanted to bring up? I know that we've seen some guys jump in and out of the rotation, especially after Matt's got injured. Who are you looking at as being the, I guess, first guy out of the bullpen to replace one of our first 5?
Yeah, so I honestly think the first guy up would probably be Palante.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because he showed last year that he can start games. He had a stretch in June through July where he started 10 games, and he had a serviceable 4.13 ERA through 56 innings pitched. And that's not an easy thing to go from starting or relieving straight into starting. So I just think he's one of those guys that just has the right mentality. He's going to do whatever the club needs him to do. And last year he kind of proved that. So I see him, if anyone in the starting rotation goes down, I see him as slotting into that position.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. It was so much fun I mean, because when Matt's went down, we were like, well, what the heck are we gonna do? Because as seen this offseason, it's definitely a theme that the Cardinals don't have a lot of starting pitching locked up. And like you said, that stretch where he had to step up, he definitely did. So he's
Hmm.
just a shows that he's got tenacity. It shows that he's a player that you can rely on. I like Andre Palante, and I think that it goes a long way to be able to do what he did, especially in this organization where that's really encouraged. So I agree. I think he's the first guy out of the rotation. But give me some of your thoughts on Matthew Liberatore because this is a guy that I have not been impressed with. I'm not really sure how much I would like to rely on Liberatore coming out and being in the rotation if needed. So what are your thoughts there with Matthew Liberatore?
Yeah, so I started digging into his stats, and honestly, I kind of think we rushed him. So when he was with Tampa Bay, he was obviously a big prospect. I think he's still on our list as a top prospect. But in rookie ball, he had a 1.38 ERA through 32 innings. In single A, he had a 3.1 ERA through 78 innings. He comes over to St. Louis and went straight to AAA in 2021. Did okay, just a 4.04 ERA and 124 innings pitched. And then in 2022, he stayed in AAA, and he seems like he kind of blew up a little bit with a 5.17 ERA. And then we give him some MLB experience, and obviously that didn't go well either. He had a 5.97 ERA through 34 innings. He started the majority of those games. He had 9 games total with 7 starts. So I honestly just don't think he was ready. I definitely think we rushed him a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess that can come like crosstalk from organization to organization. Maybe the Rays were talking about, because obviously the Rays have a very different philosophy on baseball than the Cardinals do. And so, with the way that maybe again, organization to organization, they were saying that Liberatore was more ready than he was. I just didn't see it. Like you said, I'm going to go back to that walks, hits per innings pitched. His was even worse than Jack's, 1.731. Let up a lot of hits and walked a lot of guys. I mean, it's a bad mixture for being a big league pitcher. So, um, I hope that he's able to settle in a little bit more. I think that he needs a little bit more minor league experience before that we can throw him back in.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
but yeah, I'm not sure that he's the most reliable option, but he's definitely somebody out there that could, if he finds that spark, he could be that next person. And so there's another guy that Mozeliak touted as being a potential option for pitching depth, which was Zach Thompson. I haven't really looked into him. I know he was up last season and pitched well. I didn't dive deep into the stats though. So what are your thoughts maybe on Zach Thompson being a reliable option?
So honestly, he's probably more reliable in the bullpen right now.
Hmm.
He was super effective last year in the bullpen with in 34 innings, he had a 2.08 ERA. He only made 1 start, but the only thing that worries me there is he does not have a good track record in the minor leagues. In 2021, he had a 7.06 ERA. In 2022, he had a 4.72 ERA in AAA. So maybe he's figuring something out because obviously that's a huge difference. That's a 3 point difference between those two. But
Hmm.
I definitely wouldn't count on him. But like he's shown that he's got that elite curveball. So maybe there is something there. I hope there is. He's an exciting pitcher. I like him. And he is a lefty for those that don't know. But that's just someone to throw out there to say maybe he does develop in the right way and in the future could be a reliable pitcher for us.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that stands out to me after I just take a quick look at him is that in that AAA season in 2022, he had a strikeouts per nine of 11.3.
Hmm.
And that's out of 53 innings pitched. So, I mean, I guess that curveball works for him because he was apparently lights out in terms of striking guys out. Um, so yeah, I think that really sums up the pitching depth in terms of reliable people for the rotation. We'll definitely get into it more when it comes to uh, the bullpen and the nature of our bullpen in our next episode. But there are a couple other guys that John Mozeliak mentioned that are prospects that have some potential of coming up. Um, some of those names that we have heard in the media are Gordon Graceffo, Michael McGreevy, and Tink Hence. A couple of these guys we talked about already in an earlier episode, but these are guys that are slotted to make the big leagues in a couple of years, around 2024. But I guess let's just kind of go one by one and give some quick thoughts on what you think on these guys. I know when I was looking for our prospects episode, Gordon Graceffo jumped out at me just based off of how he has um, that big frame. He's a ginormous guy, 6'4", 210, and just has some lights out pitching. 10 wins over the last season with a sub 3 ERA. A lot of innings pitched for a young guy. What do you think about Gordon Graceffo? Still in Double A, but curious as to how you feel about him moving up and being a potential prospect spark plug.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got all the potential in the world right now. I would assume he's going to start in AAA this year. You know, that's typically how it goes, which I told you before we started this is our AAA team is going to be absolutely stacked because
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have Graceffo and McGreevy most likely starting the year at AAA, but then we also have Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn starting in AAA this year. So they're going to be stacked. But yeah, I don't know. All the potential in the world. Would like to see him at some point. Maybe they just shove right away, and maybe towards the end of the season we get some glimpses of a few of these guys. But yeah, that's all I really have about the prospects.
Yeah, same thing goes for me. Is that it's exciting to see such a young crop of guys coming up. Another reason why the Cardinals don't want to go out and do that big spending that some of these other teams are doing, especially on pitching, because we have so many guys that are just on the precipice of being on this team that can be a complete difference maker in terms of getting that rotation to where it needs to be. So just the patience. It sucks, but the patience of waiting for young guys to be big league ready is, I think, where we're at as Cardinals fans. We just have to be ready when these guys do come up to watch some great pitching. And they're getting used to these new rules as well, which is also great. They're going to be kind of trained in the ways that the major leagues are starting to go. And so it's going to be great. I mean, the pace of game is going to be faster. These guys are going to be throwing hard. So I'm excited for the next chapter of Cardinals pitching. It's just going to take a minute for us to get there. So patience is always a virtue. Um, what other thoughts do you have on the starting rotation, possible prospects, or depth pieces? Is there anything else that you wanted to get into or had on your mind before we close out that segment?
I just have one last final thought, and I think these prospects are probably going to catch people by surprise because I think the majority of Cardinal fans don't really look at the pipeline that we have, and like you said, this is the reason why we're like right now is not the best time to sign big pitchers right now is because we have guys on the way, and like I said, I think they might catch some fans off guard.
Definitely, definitely. Well, to wrap that up, let's talk about some of the news that's going on around the league because there's still some bigger things happening. Baseball's a little quiet right now, but in terms of news around the league, let's start off with our number one topic. Do you want to get right into it?
Yeah, let's go ahead. So yeah, Carlos Correa, you know, that's been like the big headline, not only because he's a great player, but it's a significant contract that him and Scott Boras are seeking. And we saw that the contract fell through with the Giants, and me and you were both like, oh wow, that's weird because normally the physical, no one like holds a big contract up on just the physical. And
Right.
we're like, okay, he's going to be a Met. And now the Mets are saying they're concerned about the physical. And what I don't know, it's the first time I've seen it on one team, and it's definitely the first time I've seen two teams hold this huge contract up on just a physical. And you can go ahead and talk about what they're finding in the physical that's kind of concerning.
Yeah, I've been trying to look into it because, like I stated last week, I was just like, what is it? Because yeah, like you said, I mean, Cardinals uh, were trying to sign Wilson Contreras pending physical. Okay, they got Wilson Contreras.
Right.
Like, all these teams, Corey Kluber, pending physical, I'm sure. So like, you just never think that it's an issue. What it sounds like the issue is when he was in the minors, he fractured his fibula, and I guess I don't know if it was a bad surgery job or what it was, but what they apparently ended up doing is that they put a plate in his ankle and to try and allow everything to kind of heal around it. And just complete speculation from a doctor who's never even met or examined Correa is speculating that there's possible arthritis that could come from that type of procedure. Again, that is not even confirmed as to what is holding up this deal. But just the possibilities that the surgery wasn't done well, or there's potential injury that could flare up in a 12-year span, which is the length of his contract. Um, that's what seems to be the problem with what the Mets and the Correa camp are talking about. So it's really interesting. I haven't seen this in a long time. I don't think I've ever seen this. So the fact that this is still going on, the most recent tweet that I saw is that there's a 51 to 49% chance that he signs with the Mets, and that's very slim.
Hmm.
So I mean, with every day that passes and neither camp is talking, I don't think that he's going to get either what he wants, or I don't think that'll be a Met. So they're either going to have to like come to terms because it sounds like Cohen wants him, but I feel like Cohen's now saying like 5 years or like 6 years, cutting that deal in half. Uh,
Yeah, and Scott Boras and that camp doesn't want that. It sounds like they might be going more towards like some kind of um, I don't even know what the right verbiage would be, but some kind of thing in the contract that says if that does get injured, then something, yeah, I don't know, he gets paid less or something like that. But something to keep in mind is that was 8 years ago. So in the minor leagues, when he fractured his fibula, was in 2014. So I know in 2014 I broke my thumb from a baseball related injury, and I couldn't imagine some team telling me that I'm not playing as well because, or I might not play as well because I had surgery on my thumb 8 years ago. I'm like, but he's had plenty of seasons that he's very effective. So it's just, it is weird seeing that, but it
yeah,
must be something significant because you don't see deals get held up very often.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't I see it going through. I see a lot of terms and conditions being thrown in if it does go through with the Mets. But yeah, it's really weird that I mean, I'm surprised that Cohen didn't even get it sounds like he didn't even give anybody on the Giants a call before. Like
Yeah,
why did
weird.
why did you turn him away? Because the deal was or agreed to darn quickly after. So um yeah,
And that shuts down any speculation that Boris and Cohen were talking behind doors whenever the deal was going through. So now it just proves that there actually is some kind of physical,
physical issue that they're concerned about. Yeah.
yeah, that any team sounds like any team would be concerned about. So
Yeah. I don't know. It's gonna be weird if he
that
doesn't
falls
sign with the
through.
yeah, if he doesn't sign with the Mets, what do they do? Um, I don't know. And just if it does fall through, I'm gonna have to get off Twitter because I'm gonna be tired of hearing every Cardinals fan saying that we need to go sign him.
I
Um,
know.
let's move on to the next guy. I'll just get into this one because this was the more interesting to me. I don't know if it's that interesting to you.
Oh yeah.
Um, but Trevor Bauer, he was obviously facing a suspension for breaking code of conduct with the MLB in terms of domestic disputes and things like that. His suspension was for 2 seasons. They just uh, lowered that game suspension to from 324 games to 194 games, making him eligible for next season after missing 50 games. So the Dodgers have till January 6th to make a decision on whether or not he's going to play for the Dodgers. And then the other interesting part of that is if he doesn't play for the Dodgers still owe him money. So due to the fact that he'll miss 50 games, he still gets 22 million out of the Dodgers next season. So um, I saw a lot of people as soon as this came up that saying that every team should try and go get him. What are your thoughts? Do you think this guy's a pariah? Do you think I don't see him ever becoming a Cardinal because of his track record?
Yeah.
But
Uh,
what are your thoughts on Trevor Bauer?
so I'm actually a really big fan of Trevor Bauer. It's one of those situations where you kind of have to separate the player from the person. I don't. I try and stay out of whatever happened off the field, but I will say, looking at it objectively, he was ruled innocent in whatever he did. So I agree with shortening the suspension. Um, However, obviously he's not going to be a Cardinal. But I think the most interesting thing is if the Dodgers don't sign him, then he would get paid the league minimum. Is that right?
So, from what I was trying to verify this, but I'm pretty sure if another team signs him, they then would have to pay him the league minimum because he would become like the possession of that team or whatever. Like that sounds weird to say it that way, but
Yeah.
that's what I thought I read. I couldn't find anything to verify that, but I'm pretty sure he would get like 700,000 from whatever team ends up picking him up.
That would be crazy because he's a very good pitcher. I like his on-field antics. I understand why some people might think it's disrespectful, but I'm a fan of it. I think it brings some kind of entertainment in the game. Now, if everyone was like him, it would get overwhelming, but I think you got to have these kind of characters in the game.
Yeah, I go back and forth with it. Obviously, like you said, separating the art from the artist, the player from the whatever you want to call that
Person.
person. Yeah. Um, who knows what happened? You can never really know. But in terms of what he did in that season where he won the Cy Young, he he literally told MLB, "You guys aren't paying attention to this, so I'm gonna go win your award for best pitcher
Yeah.
by doing this." And I
Yeah.
think that's the most like middle finger to the establishment thing. It's like I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like that's so cool. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not that big a fan of him. But the fact that he was like, "This is a problem, and you guys aren't doing anything about it." So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go win. What is the prize? Like $1 million for winning
I
the
don't
Cy
know.
Young. There's some type of prize money, and he got it. And then he got a major contract with the Dodgers because of
Oh
it.
yeah.
So that's pretty cool. It's just kind of like it's pretty punk rock. Like just thinking
Yeah.
about like again, f the establishment. Like you guys have these rules and you aren't enforcing them at all, and now it's caused us to go into stupid mode, and we have to run our fingers through the hair of every pitcher that comes to the freaking mound. But
Yeah.
that was one pretty cool thing that he did in that season. Um,
My favorite thing about him is his vlogs. He would do these awesome vlogs that show behind the scenes in the clubhouse, on planes, his warm up routine, his pitching routine. He didn't care who saw it
mhm.
because he was just having fun. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed his vlogs. And other players have tried to create vlogs, but they're just not as put together as his were. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing I miss about him is I love seeing those behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, and not to get off on too much of a tangent, because I don't know how likely this is to happen, but could you imagine if Lars Nootbaar started doing something like that for the Cardinals? Like,
Dude.
I feel like the Cardinals wouldn't allow it because they are a little stringent
Yeah,
about what
yeah,
gets
yeah.
out there and everything, but they need to lighten up and like let that guy just be like their social media guy.
I
And
agree.
And it would be so good for the Cardinals. Like that's one of the biggest things holding them back. Like we saw with Randy Rosarena, he posted that video of Mike Schilt, and that's a little too behind the scenes. I don't
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
was supposed to be shared with anybody.
right.
But if you do things like that, showing how like what the Cardinal way is from the Cardinals
Yeah,
perspective, like that's what I hope we get to do one day with this, man. I hope that we get to show people what the Cardinals are like, that they aren't just sticks in the mud, like they're real like baseball players.
that have
So
personality.
yeah, they have
Yeah.
personality. They come from the same walks of life like us. Like I hope one day we get there. So let's move on. I wanna talk a little bit about Sean Murphy because you have some interesting takes, I think, on what's going on there. Kind of give me a lowdown on what happened and a little bit more on your thoughts.
Yeah, so obviously we all know that Sean Murphy was traded to the Braves. And the Braves extend Sean Murphy, and it's not a surprise because they do this with pretty much all of their young talent. Anyone who's in the arbitration um, years, basically, they're extending any kind of player that they see potential in. They're extending them past their arbitration years for a long term, and I think it's a really cool thing that they're doing. I think it's really smart for them because they're not necessarily spending these big contracts because they're necessarily or they're relatively, that was not the right word for that, they're relatively small contracts. I wouldn't say small, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's not what they're going to be worth in a couple years when they reach free agent. It just shows that they're a really good organization and players want to stick around there for a while. But I really do think they're building a dynasty right now because they have all these young players like Ronald Acuna and Ozzy Albies, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Michael Harris, Spencer Strider. I mean, that group right there, you would just think all-star team, but no, that's the Braves. So
hmm
I think they're doing an awesome job locking in their young talent, and they're exciting. I think they're going to be solid over the next 10 years, to be honest.
definitely, dude. I like you said, just listing off. It's insane that Ronald Acuna Jr. is only working on $100 million contract right now.
Insane, dude.
I know that he was hurt, and that kind of hurts that value that he has, but he's one of the most electric players. I love watching him play. Like I'll go to a Braves game, just like I'll go to a Phillies game to watch Bryce Harper play. I'll go to a Braves game just to see Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yep.
And so another thing that I loved seeing, Michael Harris. Somebody was talking. I mean, everybody was talking about how just because of the weird dynamic that we had this offseason, the Mets went off and spent, and the Braves went off and spent, but they're, I guess, smarter with their spending, in my opinion, because they're
Hmm.
getting these guys and they're coming to an agreement in terms that make sense to an organization, and they're not insulting these guys. There's obviously incentives built in and everything like that. And they're trying to create a World Series ball club. I mean, the way that baseball has been run for decades. So it's just this guy who's again coming in and saying "f you" to the establishment. I don't care about your tax that you're making for me. I'm going to go spend way over that. I'm going to spend $500 million this year. I don't give a crap. The Braves take the opposite approach, and I completely agree with it. I don't know who he was responding to, but somebody was saying like investigate the Braves for labor abuse laws or something like that,
Yeah.
and Michael Harris was just like, you know what, money's money. So
Yep.
it's obvious that these guys are just guys who want to play this game. They want to play it at an elite level, and they want to go win. So that's cool. It makes me respect the Braves organization a lot more than I did a little bit ago. So I agree. I think this is the way that you create a dynasty. I don't think that you get a whole bunch of 30-year-olds who are going to be have-beens in about 5 years after their 10-year contract is started. I think you get these guys when they're young. You get them to grow other players around, and it's the to me the right way to play and manage the sport.
Yeah, yep. I think they did a great job. Um, so if you don't have any final thoughts on that, then I'll run through some of the most recent free agent signings.
Yeah, tell me what else is going on around the league.
So, just a few minor moves. The main reason we mention these, or I'm mentioning these, is that we have mentioned them before on previous podcasts. So the first one, of course, your wish list item, Rich Hill signs with the Pirates. Um, Obviously, we were just kind of joking uh, whenever we were putting that on the wish list. He's going to be turning 43 years old, and it's just interesting to note that the Pirates get him, so they're going to try and flip him just like they do every other pitcher.
Isn't that
Uh,
so Pirates? Like,
oh yeah,
what is the? I mean, the reason Rich Hill takes this contract is because it's the only person that's calling him. But
yeah.
like, what are the Pirates thinking
They're
when they're
hoping
saying,
he shoves somehow
yeah,
and he
and
gets
they can
traded at the
trade him?
deadline. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an odd way of going, especially when there was still some talent still out there, like guys that you're going to talk about next. I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, it's not a competitive signing. It's like I said, it's just going to be eating innings. They don't want to overdevelop rookies, I would think. So they're just going to get this veteran guy that maybe he'll teach the young guys some things, but they're really hoping that he does well so that they can trade him.
Yeah.
So next one, I'm going to actually group these two. Nathan Evaldi gets taken off the board with the Rangers, and Kluber gets taken off the board with the Red Sox. So those two are, in my opinion, very similar pitchers. They have the same average salary per year, where Evaldi gets 2 years, 20 mil, and Kluber gets 1 year, 10 mil. So those are just two pitchers we've mentioned in the past that we could see the Cardinals potentially signing for that fifth spot in the rotation. Nothing too much there. Not really any news.
Hmm.
So we'll move on to the next one. The Blue Jays and Diamondbacks made a trade. The reason I want to mention this one is because the Diamondbacks got the Blue Jays' top catching prospect and Gabriel Moreno. They also got Loris Gurriel. The Diamondbacks sent over Dalton Varsho, which he's actually a very solid player. If you don't know much about him, you should look him up. But we mentioned before that there was a possibility that the Cardinals would trade for Moreno, and we all knew that the Blue Jays would get rid of one of their three catchers. So looks like they came to an agreement to get rid of Moreno. Um, and next one I have is Michael Conforto signs with the Giants. Claps for the Giants. They finally sign a player. They were in on the Judge. They were obviously in on Correa, and they said, "Finally, we have a player." And
Took him
Michael
from the Mets
Conforto
too.
took him from the Mets. Yeah, yeah. They said, "F you, Mets. We're gonna take one of your players." Not quite as good, but the main reason I mention him is because he's a lefty outfielder. There is some kind of potential. The Cardinals, maybe they had conversations about him, but obviously that wasn't going to happen. And then our former reliever Nick Whitgren goes across the state of Missouri to the Kansas City Royals. He wasn't very effective in our bullpen last year. I think he had a 5+ ERA, but it was worth mentioning.
Definitely. Well, I think that wraps things up for around the league. I guess anything else that you have on your mind in terms of what's going on in baseball or what you're seeing online, or Cardinals rotation in general.
Nothing much, man. I'm looking forward to it. Once January starts, you start to really look forward to the season, even though I've been looking forward to it since it ended. I'm
Yeah.
excited for the rule changes. Maybe another episode we can talk about those because a lot of people hate new rules and all that, but I think it's going to bring the game to a much better spot than it is right now. And I'm not saying it's a bad spot right now, but there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah. Topic of discussion, especially as we get closer to the season. After watching the World Cup, I'm excited to watch the World Baseball Classic. We got some
Oh
guys
yeah. When does that
from
start?
our roster. I think it starts like during spring training.
That's
So
weird.
Yeah, I think those guys are going to use the World Baseball Classic as kind of their spring training, and then they'll be ready for the season once that's over. Um,
Interesting.
but I hope it's as electric as the World Cup. I don't know if you watched any of the World Cup, but that was pretty fun and especially getting to watch Messi win after his storied career. So
I saw
I hope
something that said, for people who don't understand, Messi winning the World Cup is Mike Trout winning the World Series. And I was like,
that's
ah,
that's
I get
a
it.
it's a very big comp. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good comp.
yeah.
But other than that, like I said, baseball's been a little cold in the news recently. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen to Carlos Correa. I'm sure we'll talk about it next week if something happens. But everybody have a good New Year. Be safe out there. As always, you can find us on Twitter at red_jacket club. Find us on there, give us a shout out, listen to our podcast here on Spotify. Um, Other than that, I wish there's more to talk about, but I think we're wrapping up here. Um, for everything Cardinal news, you can find us again on Spotify, on Twitter. But thank you for listening. Thank you for joining the club, and we'll see you next time.